Hello and welcome to Anything History. In today's video, we're actually standing here alongside this wonderfully restored section of the Lincoln Highway. The Lincoln Highway was the first transcontinental road built for automobiles in the United States, and it was dedicated in 1913. The Lincoln Highway was pretty amazing, especially in 1913. It covered 3,000 miles from one coast to the other, from New York City to San Francisco. Hello, this is Russell, and welcome to Anything History. So, what was the Lincoln Highway? Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, it represented the nation's first attempt to build a true transcontinental highway for the automobile. It stretched roughly 3,400 miles and crossed, depending on the route and time, at least a dozen states. It began as little more than an ambitious idea, but with a lot of persistence and years of hard work, the project ultimately succeeded in linking the east and west coast of the United States in a continuous, drivable highway. Before the Lincoln Highway, long-distance automotive travel in the United States was little more than a dream. The roads were mostly dirt, uneven, unconnected, and at the mercy of the seasons. It was Carl G. Fisher, automotive entrepreneur and co-founder of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, who saw opportunity where others saw chaos. Fisher dreamed of something bold, a continuous improved roadway stretching from coast to coast. He believed that automobiles could offer Americans a new kind of freedom, a chance to travel at their own pace without relying on railroads or rigid timetables. Others joined the cause, like Henry Joy, president of Packard Motor Company, and Frank Sieberling, president of Goodyear. They understood the power of a name and proposed calling the route the Lincoln Highway, both to honor Abraham Lincoln and to give the project a universal, patriotic appeal, something both donors and the public could rally around. On July 1st, 1913, the Lincoln Highway Association was formed to promote, fund, and coordinate the effort. One early controversy was what route the highway would take. On an early tour, the association considered including Colorado and Kansas as part of the Lincoln Highway. However, despite political pressure, the association ultimately prioritized a direct route that would bypass both states. A temporary detour to Denver was briefly added to appease angry politicians, but the association removed it 2 years later to preserve the highway's efficiency. In 1913, construction began on a route that would start in New York City's Times Square, wind through New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, Wyoming, Utah, and Nevada, finally ending in San Francisco's Lincoln Park. It was a monumental project, and nothing like it had really been attempted since the Transcontinental Railway in the 19th century, and it immediately ran into enormous challenges. The first and perhaps greatest challenge was the simple lack of usable roads. Outside of major cities, the country's roadways were really nothing more than wagon trails. These early road crews built through landscapes that resisted them at every turn, fighting mud, dust, floods, and snow. The route crossed the windswept plains of Wyoming, the steep slopes of the Rockies, the barren deserts of Nevada, and the unpredictable salt flats of Utah. As the road took shape, it awakened Americans' desire to explore. Travelers followed the developing route even when it was rough, drawn by the adventure of a cross-country journey. One amazing early adventure was in August of 1915, when former race car driver and Hollywood actress Anita King set out from Los Angeles to become the first woman to drive across the continent alone. After completing her journey along the Lincoln Highway, she made a film about the experience titled The Race, starring herself and Victor Moore. One of the earliest expeditions was in 1918, during the waning months of World War I. The Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company embarked on a historic coast-to-coast trip. Using a Packard freight truck, the Goodyear expedition traveled from Boston to Pasadena, California, in just 13 days. Perhaps the most ambitious early expedition was the 1919 U.S. Army Motor Transportation Corps' Transcontinental Motor Truck Convoy. Much of the highway at that time was still unfinished, often little more than rough dirt tracks and dotted lines on a map, making the crossing a true test of machinery and endurance. The convoy itself was massive, consisting of 34 heavy cargo trucks, 4 light trucks, 2 mobile machine shops, a blacksmith shop, and a wrecking truck with 2 officers and 20 enlisted men. A few years later, in 1924, the Ford Motor Company sent its 10 millionth automobile on a cross-country publicity tour along the Lincoln Highway. This trip underscored the road's growing cultural and commercial significance. In 1925, L.B. Miller set the record for traversing the Lincoln Highway in 102 hours and 45 minutes. The success of the Lincoln Highway sparked a nationwide movement. States and cities established their own named highways, each with unique identities and routes. However, the country was covered in a tangled web of marked roads, a patchwork that confused travelers as much as guided them. By the mid-1920s, it was clear America needed a standardized way to designate its highways. In 1925, the American Association of State Highway Officials introduced the U.S. numbered highway system. Under this new structure, named highways, including the Lincoln Highway, were replaced by numbers. By the 1940s, many of the Lincoln Highway signs had disappeared, fading into history as the interstate highway system gained prominence. Yet the Lincoln Highway never truly vanished. Large portions of the original path still exist, especially through Pennsylvania, Nebraska, and Wyoming. Travelers who follow those early stretches can still sense what it meant to those early motorists. The freedom that the automobile offered, and the belief that a simple road could bring together an entire nation. If you want to come and see this great section of restored highway, it's in Elkhorn, Nebraska, just outside of Omaha. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel out.